You can take a flower, roll it up and make it fine. Sprinkle it with knowledge and a little bit of time. Cover it with headlines and a sweet euphoria too. Cannabis Man, Cannabis Man, Cannabis Man. Spreading news and joy across the land. Diving deep into the growing green. Cannabis Man, they're all king.
Ooh, yeah. Welcome into another episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Thank you for clicking on the show. I am your host, Don Kleppin, and I really appreciate you checking this out. If it is your first time, welcome. It's a show where we're trying to take a more journalistic look at all things legal cannabis. I'm a broadcaster in Chicago. I've been on the radio for about 15 years here, doing news, traffic. I worked my way up from a producer. I've been on various stations around the city. You can hear me on WGN, 720 AM, Saturday mornings, doing news there. And I've been a personal cannabis user for going on 20 years now. I started it when some friends introduced me to the plant after high school. I was about 18 or 19. And I found after finally feeling the effects, it took me a little over a month of weekends hanging out in my buddy's basement, just smoking bongs, watching Adult Swim. And we did laugh a lot, but it took me a while to feel it. And then once I did, I noticed that as much as I enjoyed the social element, that it helped me get to sleep at night, which was something that I had always struggled with. And so that was what kind of made me keep it as a part of my life, a regular part of my regimen. And over the years, I found it helped with other things too, combating, anxiety and stress of the day-to-day existence. It helped me recover from exercise or, just body pain from training for anything. It also helped me with focus sometimes, depending on the strain, creativity, lots of different things. And so, therefore, cannabis has been a big part of my life ever since. And since I became a parent last year with my wife, Gretchen, it has also kind of helped, I found, for me anyway, deal with some of the stress of parenting. And it helps me stay patient when those moments get really rough and you just gotta kind of white knuckle it and be there with your child. I find that cannabis has been just kind of a big help with all of this. That being said, I do not believe cannabis is right for everybody. I don't believe it's some kind of miracle plant or that it's a panacea for all of life's issues. But I do think that there are many people out there who can benefit from it the way that I found that it helped me, if they would give it a chance and if it hadn't been so prohibited and propagandized over the last century as this prohibition has been going in earnest since 1937. That is what led me to start this show 3 years ago now on 4/20 of 2022. I wanted to bring conversations with experts, news headlines, results of research studies, what we know about the cannabis plant and what we don't know. But I thought that expert conversations and perspective, new products, all of that might help somebody out there decide whether or not cannabis is right for you. So that's been kind of the goal of the show, and in that 3 years that this has been running, this show has now reached just about 90 countries, almost 1,700 cities around the world, all 50 states in America, and I really can't thank you enough for helping make that happen, you listening right now. Even if it's your first time, or your 100-plus time, as that's how many episodes I've got out now. I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate you being on this journey with me and giving this a shot. There are millions of podcasts out there, and so I'm very, very grateful and flattered and floored still that this podcast is considered among the top 10% in all the world's podcasts by Listen Notes. And the platform Good Pods has voted this the number 1 indie news podcast and a top 5 cannabis podcast and society and culture as well. And all of that is something that I never could have possibly imagined 3 years ago when I started this. So I feel vindicated more than anything else that the interest from people around the world is there. People are hungry to learn more about this plant. And as this green frontier, this legal space for cannabis continues to expand. We're at about 24 recreational states in the U.S. and I think 38 for medical. As this territory continues to grow around the world as well with other countries, more and more people are going to want to find this information. And so if you know anybody who might be interested, or you've got friends you think could benefit from learning this stuff, or somebody else who likes to stay plugged into the latest cannabis news, tell them about the Cannabis Man podcast. And you can also help me out by leaving a rating or a review for the show. If you're listening on Spotify, there are stars underneath this episode. If you click on any one of those, it is a rating for the show. If you're listening on YouTube, leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review and rate the show there as well. Any and all of that really helps me out, continuing to stand out from other podcasts out there. So if you've already done that, thank you very much. And if you haven't, now's a great time. On today's episode, this week's, I've got a lot to tell you about. There's some very exciting news. I'm recording this April 22nd, 2 days after the glorious holiday of 420. I hope you had a wonderful celebratory 420 weekend, even more glorious this year than many others because it fell on Easter Sunday, which is just kind of a double up on the holiday. It's falling on a Sunday anytime is great anyway because you could just chill ideally and smoke all day or consume cannabis however you choose to. But I do think there's something a little extra special about it being on like a holy holiday. We got to spend a lot of time with the family, and I hope you got to enjoy the day as well. But looking ahead now, there is a lot of news to talk about. A lot of states marked the holiday in different ways. There's a study that I want to tell you about relating to what has been found for medical cannabis and cancer rates. There is a state that has really been seeing a boom in their cannabis industry. I will reveal which state that is. The New York Post ran an article recently about a certain demographic of people who are really enjoying cannabis these days. And a recent study that was just completed has identified, according to it anyway, the best state for growing cannabis in America. Think about that. I thought of the obvious answers. I've talked about a handful of states on the show which have a great climate for growing cannabis. This state was not any of those. It was not a state that I expected. So take a few guesses, send a text into the show, scroll down, hit the text Cannabis Man link if you want to take a guess. I will reveal which state that is at the end of the episode. Of course, I've got my High Haiku, and my conversation with an expert this week is really insightful. It's a great story. She is an inventor, longtime cannabis advocate, a public speaker, and an author. Very active in the legal cannabis space. She's done a lot here in the Midwest and around the country for cannabis enthusiasts like myself, and she's created a product that I believe fills an obvious need in the cannabis space. Got some products to tell you about too, in case you're looking for some post-420 gifts to get yourself, because why not? And lots more coming up on this episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Here we go.
This is Tommy Chong, and you're listening to the Cannabis broadcast.
And now we're into the episode. Before I get into the news and the products to tell you about, I want to share with you a little story that it was an experience that my family and I had yesterday on the 21st of April, from when I'm recording this yesterday. I mean, had the day off after 420, and we were all just kind of relaxing. It was a very busy Sunday. A lot of driving. Spent the morning at my sister Kelly's. She hosted a little Easter egg hunt for my nephew Landon. Violet is a little bit young right now to be crawling around for eggs. We did put some on the floor to see if she'd go to them. She was just kind of playing with toys. Maybe next year she'll show a little more interest. But Landon was interested enough going around the backyard. He did great. But then we went up to Milwaukee, hung out at my grandma's house. She always makes a great ham, cheesy potatoes, always a delicious and unbelievable spread at my Grandma Betty's in Milwaukee. Just great, great stuff. And then on our way back home, we swung by my wife Gretchen's brother Chris's house. And we had some dessert there and had Violet, spend some time with her family as well. It was all in all a great day, but pretty packed. A lot of driving, a lot of moving around, a lot of visiting and socializing. Great, great fun. And I certainly imbibed and celebrated 420 at the end of the day. I made up for the lost time of the day that I spent driving that I wasn't able to celebrate. But so yesterday we were doing a lot of just kind of relaxing and recuperating from that, and we were thinking about what we wanted to do for the day. It was a little bit gray, a little bit windy, but seeing as we had, time together and nothing compelling us, we decided to think about some bucket list items that we wanted to accomplish around the city of Chicago that we hadn't been able to do. And we landed on driving south on Lakeshore Drive, DuSable Lakeshore Drive now, as it's officially titled. We went down past the city, down past the museum campus to about 57th Street, and we turned off near the Griffin Museum of Science and Industry, where there's a grove of cherry blossoms. And I have heard people talk about this around Chicago over the years. Apparently, the trees were a gift from the Japanese in years past. I don't remember if it had to do with the World's Fair or when exactly these came about. But there is a large grove of cherry blossom trees right near, just south of that Museum of Science and Industry. And around this time in the spring, April specifically, this is when they typically bloom. And with the wind in Chicago and a lot of the rain, they don't always last for very long. So you tend to see people gather down there around this time of year in a few weeks just to try and see them. We had never done that, and so we drove down yesterday to give them a look, and they were beautiful. We were so glad to get there. The wind had died down by the time we found parking and walked over into the park. It was really, really beautiful. Sat on the grass with Violet, just kind of took some pictures, taking in the day. It was great. But before we left, we decided to kind of just walk around a little more, and we found this hidden gem, a really serene garden in the midst of this city of Chicago, one of the world's great cities. Very busy, millions of people. In the midst of this garden, south of this grove of cherry blossom trees, it's called the Osaka Garden. I had never been there. I'd heard of it years past, but I'd forgotten all about it. We saw a sign that indicated it was there. One bridge to get to it was closed, but thankfully there was another that was open. We crossed over, took Violet out of the stroller, found a little hiding place for that because the paths were so narrow, we weren't going to be able to use the stroller. And we just pulled Violet out and we went for a little walk through this Osaka Garden. And I want to tell you what a wonderful hidden gem this thing is. It is so scenic. It is so peaceful. It is manicured in such a way that you cannot help but feel at peace walking through it. At least that was the case for me. Wood chips crunch underfoot. The paths are lined with stones. You have these sculpted stone figures, not necessarily statues, but kind of like symbolic icons that are peppering the path on both sides. There's a little architecture. There's like a little gazebo that you can step inside. It's wooden in the Japanese style. And then there are rocks lining this pond, I suppose, a larger pond. But we sat down by them, and it was quiet, with the occasional siren or honking horn or some other city noise, somebody laughing or whatever from beyond. But it was pretty well buried. And I say buried, like it was pretty well kept away from the busyness of the streets. It's kind of near this University of Chicago campus, so there's a lot of foot traffic. There's a lot of vehicular traffic. There was even construction. They're building some big structure there. Looked like a very cool designed building, but so there were some paths that were cut off because of that. So the point is, a lot of opportunity for noise, and yet much of it died away as we sat on the rocks by this pond watching the ducks kind of just swim calmly by, watching some fish break the surface of the water, seemingly happily, not jumping fully free of the water, but coming about halfway out. I don't even know what these fish were, but they looked large. You get other birds just kind of flying around. And then we stood up and finished our walk over the pedestrian bridges, took in all the plants, the beautiful flowers alongside of the path, saw a lot of interesting colors in there. It was just a wonderful, wonderful hidden gem. And I gotta say, the city of Chicago is full of stuff like that. I always tell people you could live here your entire life, and there's no way that you could experience and explore everything that this city has to offer. Because even the best stuff, new things are popping up all the time. And something like this is just there, a free resource hidden in the heart of this city, up against Lake Michigan, but sort of on this little inlet, like I said, near that grove of cherry blossom trees and the Griffin Museum of Science and Industry. It just was a wonderful, I thought, somewhat magical afternoon that really was just taken on a whim with me and my wife and our daughter. And it turned into just a wonderful time. And so if you're in the city at some point, if you come to Chicago and you got some time, I cannot recommend, if you're there around April, check out the cherry blossom trees, but no matter what time of year you end up here, that Osaka Garden down in that area is a really nice slice of nirvana, very calm, very, serene and just uplifting. And it's a nice little quiet green space that I think is definitely worth spending some time in. And so on to some other green that I think is worth your time. Let me tell you about some of these products that I've been trying. I mentioned on last week's episode, there was a 420 gift guide that I got from my friends at Grasslands Agency. They do such a great job of getting the word out about some really good cannabis brands that you should be aware of. I try when I can to have some of their clients on the show to just tell you about what it is that they're working on and where you can find their good stuff. But on that 420 gift guide, it's full of great stuff, 420 products. They've got merchandise, they've got clothing, they've got gummies, they've got beverages, they've got a little can, a tiny can where you can grow seeds. I mean, it's a minuscule garden. And I have been looking for something that I could maybe start a grow in our tiny space here in this condo. And this grow can that they've got on this gift guide is just perfect for exactly that. So they've got some really great stuff. But among those things are these Fable infused botanical cocktails. It is a sort of a seltzer, but it's not like this other seltzers that I've told you about here that are very much like the carbonated water and flavored and whatnot, but this is a lot more fruity. This is more like carbonated juice, I feel like, than a seltzer. The pack that I got splits it into 3 flavors. I told you about the citrus one last week. I also had Night Fight as well, but this one that I'm trying right now is Into the Woods. Lovely name, really kind of puts you in the right frame of mind there. 5 milligrams of hemp-derived THC, 3 milligrams of CBD. They list the flavor profile as stone fruit, pine, and rosemary. And I got 6 cans from these people, 2 of each flavor, and I have found that these Into the Woods flavor, this stone fruit, pine, and rosemary, to be my favorite combo. And I wanted to save it to crack into it right now with you. So I always struggle trying to do this into the mic here. All right, it's open. Cheers, and I hope that you have an easier time getting into your cannabis beverage than I just did. Oh, boy. Yeah, it's so interesting. The stone fruit, I mean, it's a unique flavor profile. You know, there's a little bit of citrus, but it is not overpowering. I feel like the pine is also not overpowering. There's no element of any of that description that jumps out more than the other. The rosemary and pine give it this refreshing burst, and the stone fruit kind of has this underlying tone of the citrus, but it all folds together really nicely. Not any one of those dominates the flavor profile, and it just kind of fades nicely into the background after you're done drinking. I mean, I've got a little bit of an aftertaste, but not much, and it really just makes you want to go back for more. Don't mind if I do. So, If you're into the cannabis beverage space and you're looking for something to try at the end of the day or have with a dinner, something like that, check out these Fable infused botanical cocktails. No alcohol in the thing, but it's just a nice little cannabis beverage. If you've listened to the show at all, you know I'm a big fan of the beverage space. I think beverages offer a lot of benefits, and I talk a little about beverages with my guest today, along with a lot of other things, like how her journey into cannabis got started, why she decided to become an advocate for it, how she went about her advocacy all around the Midwest and other states, really just preaching the message about medical cannabis and why it's so important to expand access to people. She talks about one of her first visits to Denver and her first experience with vaping. Longtime smoker and all that, but she said, like a lot of us in the olden days, trying to keep it to herself. And then when she first experienced vaping cannabis, the discretion of that, the non-burning and so not an obvious smell and all that stuff, what a revelation that was for her. And that really set something in motion that took her into her future. That led her eventually to invent a product called VapenProp. Now, she's going to talk about it in some more detail and describe, the benefits of it, why you might think about grabbing one for yourself, some of the fun that she's had in designing it, and where you can find one. We also talk about a little bit of the struggle of kind of marketing in the cannabis space, which, the whole rescheduling thing has still kept that, sort of at arm's length. We talk about the great failure of prohibition. We also touch on the hemp versus cannabis debate. She gives her viewpoints on the different statuses of legal weed and hemp, in this 2018 Farm Bill world that we're still operating under here in America. And lots more. So let's get into this week's expert interview right now. My guest today has a fascinating story to tell and has invented a wonderful product which absolutely fills a crucial need in the cannabis space. You know that I'm a fan of kind of bringing to you news and products in the space that are serving an old need, something that's just a higher branch of an old favorite strain of flower or whatever, or there are new goods and experiences that come from more and more people trying these things, and we identify that there is a need that's not met, or there's a problem that needs to be solved. And the inventor of this product has absolutely done that. I am talking specifically about the device called VapenProp, and it is I'll let her tell you about it, but it is absolutely critical because if you're like me at all, I know you've had this experience where you get a vape pen or some device that you absolutely love, and then you pull on it a few times, and if you're not standing up to put it in your pocket, the question comes, all right, well, where do I put this thing down? How do I put it down? Because it's just going to roll off of whatever surface it's on. And if I stand it straight up, I might knock into the thing, knock that thing over and crack the cart. And now that's a whole other set of problems. So listener, please welcome with me the inventor of VapenProp, along with cannabis patient advocate and author, Kirsten Velasco. Welcome, Kirsten. Thanks for joining the show.
So happy to be here.
I appreciate you taking the time, and let's talk a little about you first before we get to the device. How did your journey into cannabis start?
Okay, so we'll keep it as brief as possible. And as my years of advocacy began and were enriched, I find that everybody has a very unique and compelling story that brings them to cannabis. And I'm the youngest of 7 kids.
Wow.
Crazy house, wanted to be like my older brothers and sisters, and started smoking weed when I was 13.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and I have actually been busted for drugs. So it took me many, many years to say that I'd actually been arrested, but it's so common and it's part of, the war on drugs.
Absolutely.
And I'm just grateful that happened to me when I was younger. And so that way it could be closed off into my, it could be wiped clean as
Sure.
I went into full adulthood. So lifelong cannabis consumer, always thinking, oh, this is bad for you. You're risking, you could lose your kids if they found out. So I'm sneaking weed. And then I find out that my niece, who has chronic illness, has actually been struggling to find cannabis that helps her. And she had been advocating for a medical program for years and told me in 2013, hey, in Illinois, they accidentally passed a medical cannabis law. I almost fell out of my seat.
Yep.
Because, you know, we are really accustomed to not expecting the government to really accomplish anything. So that was really amazing to me. And at that moment, I realized, oh, my niece, who is sick with a chronic illness, she's one of many chronically ill people who carried the burden of pressing the representatives to make this happen. And that triggered my cannabis crusade, if you will. My mission trigger got tripped because I said, that's just not fair. People who are healthy should be out there educating the public. And I realized when I saw the legislation and started reading all the rules that were being created, that everybody had this, if you build it, they will come. Like there was everything associated to the rules and the costs and the licensing, but nobody was paying attention to who was going to participate in this program. It seemed so obvious to me. And I took public speaking. I studied everything I could. I got so tired of writing the word anti-inflammatory because all of the scientific documents are constantly noting that it's an anti-inflammatory.
Right.
That has an effect on all of our systems. So, you know, you never stop being astounded at the medical science that already exists. And then I said, okay, somebody has to digest this and make it palatable to regular people who need it. Took the public speaking training, and then managed to get invited through a lot of hard work to libraries, to managed care facilities, to medical facilities, to provide presentations. And I did learn that, you know, you come to where people are, you discuss things that are manageable for them, and the overall concept with helping people understand and embrace cannabis is everything you do for yourself is part of an overall health strategy. And imagine you're holding a basket and you personally get to fill that basket with what you like. It could be stretching, yoga, vitamins, herbal tea, and cannabis. So each person gets to design that, and that just happens to be one thing that you might be able to utilize. And there are people who are like, no, I don't do that. And I go, don't you worry. This is what cannabis is. It's there for you. So you don't have to pressure anybody to consume it, because if they decide later on, they're like, oh, guess what? My friend, she told me she sleeps better at night because she takes a half of a CBD gummy.
Yep.
And it's there for you. So it was really enriching for me to do that. And I thought, oh my gosh, when these cannabis companies get on their feet, they're going to so appreciate someone who's really willing to engage tip of the spear with the community, so that they have someone to serve when the cement dries and the paint is up and the licenses are secured. And I'm sure you won't be too surprised to find out that was not the reception I received.
No, not it. It's awful, but I totally get it. It's frustrating, but I've been there too.
Yeah, every single conference that I went to, a lot of time was spent education. We need all this education. But what I got behind the scenes, what you find is that whatever entity that you would like to be compensated for is thinking, oh no, what is she going to say? Mm-hmm. I have 150 public presentations minimum under my belt, absolutely no blowback, lots of press coverage, writing press releases on my own. And then they say, because they want to cover themselves, oh no, what's she gonna say? So
right.
When people keep shouting for education, and then you get behind the scenes and you find out that people are paranoid, and you know, they've gone through a lot to get where they are, and they're maybe like, there's a lot of lawyers involved, and I discovered that lawyers assess risk. And if they don't find any risk, they say, hey, hold on a second, I'm not done looking for the risk.
Yes, absolutely. Because if there's no risk, how do I justify the bill that I'm trying to send you at the end of the month? I've got to find something. Yeah.
So I had joined Illinois Women in Cannabis and been a board member there for 5 years. And they had some close ties to some of the MSOs, the multi-state operators, which, you know, Chicago is, I call it
Ground zero.
Goo.
The primordial goo. Sure.
Evolution of these massive companies sprang forth.
Yep.
And so that helped us to, engage the community. They were great at throwing networking events. We did a little bit of cannabis outreach programs, but they were more comfortable with the networking event model.
Sure.
And so I tried to do that as well. I worked at Floramedics in Elmwood Park. Part-time. I called it my goof around job, but what a wonderful experience for me to be directly engaging with the consumers, helping them be counseled through incorporating medical cannabis into their lives, and knowing all of the cultivators, all the medicine that they were coming out with. Fantastic experience. And then when Cresco bought Floramedics, I did that full time where I said, hey, let me do outreach full time for a while. And they were getting their feet underneath of them. So there wasn't that reliable operating procedure that you would expect.
Right.
If for the people who are listening and they have any relation or connection to the cannabis space, they're going to completely understand this. So after that, I went to, it was Columbia Care that opened a new place in Villa Park.
Mm-hmm.
And then I worked there for about a year and a half or so. Again, great experience, all that means, all that implies. So I have been gathering all of this frontline, face-to-face consumer experience. But going back to my research I did early on, like 2013, 2015, going to Denver, because they had a program where you could just adult use, right?
Yeah.
That's where I discovered vaping. And after sneaking and trying to hide my usage, which is impossible, if you're igniting cannabis, it can be smelled.
Yes.
People were like, oh, that toilet paper tube trick with
the Zoob tube. I used to think that worked, and man, like, I'll never forget, like working in radio in the 2010s, and I tried to hide my usage as well. When I was in college, I didn't care, but once I started working a real job, I did try to hide it, and I'm working in the morning with like these two other guys in a small control room, and when I left that job, one of the senior guys was talking to me. He's like, hey man, we knew the entire time. This is a small room. It's carpeted. It's on your clothes. It's like, it's obvious. I mean, I was burning it right from the car 5 minutes before walking in there. And it's like, I probably brought like a lung full of smoke, like with me into that room. And yet I'm still thinking like, yeah, nobody knows, man. Like, no, they all know. Yeah.
They all know. Okay, so I'm in Denver. I pick up a vape for the first time, and imagine the revelation.
Yep.
So clean, so discreet. It's so sophisticated. You're not incinerating your cannabis.
Right.
And there are like I really counseled people and said, hey, the temperature of this is so much lower than when you're incinerating cannabis. You're not going to feel it going in.
Right.
So be careful, count the seconds as opposed to wait for a feeling of your inhalation. Because, any situation you can like make a mistake.
Yeah.
So anyway, these particular vapes that I originally got, do you remember the ones that had the little round stylus tip on the bottom?
Yes, I do. I do.
There you go, OG.
Yeah.
That's your OG cred.
Thank you. Yeah, like the stylus is perfect. Like you were thinking you were going to sign that little pin pad at a convenience store after swiping your card. That's what they were like.
Yeah. So I discovered that they needed to stay upright. If they didn't stay upright, the oil accumulated on the side of the cartridge and would leak, and then the oil wasn't down toward the heating element.
Right.
And this is a long time ago. This is 10 years ago. And I guess I'm thinking like a mom where I'm like, that's $50.
Right. Totally.
I'm not going to wreck that thing. This thing needs to be protected like it's the, and this is so funny. Like if you can't find your vape, never is there a moment where you need that vape more, because like the panic of not knowing it makes you want that vape even more. So
exactly.
All of these obvious signs that we're like, this is an important device. It works better when you keep it upright. And from there, I started teaching myself 3D design in order to solve this problem.
Yeah.
And back then, all of the vape pens were literally pen shaped as opposed to the slim and bulky and all kinds of shapes that we have now.
Right.
So by the time I had fully figured out, the type of material that would be flexible enough to open up a little bit and yet hold it tight, that evolved from the cylinder shape into the slim shape. So then I had to figure out a whole different holder for the bulky and slim vapes. And then I was making these whimsical designs. Then you'll be able to see some of those that are available on my website. And those continue to be 3D printed. Even over the years, now I did the design and I found a 3D printer in Arkansas. He's awesome. And 3D printing has evolved so much recently that like when he first started doing flexible filament, as opposed to a hard plastic they call PLA. He was the only one who could do this. And I could see that as the time went by, he got even better and better because I was giving him work to do, and he got better and better. So phenomenal at creating these prototypes for me. And I started to get more and more confident about their value. And I thought, okay, I'm at this job at now they call it Cannabis. It used to be in Villa Park. It used to be called Columbia Care. And I hope people are listening who have worked at dispensaries, and sometimes it's just, it doesn't work out. The manager was put there by a friend of his or whatever, and, it can just be so aggravating. So I just said to myself, Kirsten, you've been doing this all these years. It has been so stressful for you to be an advocate. It has not been financially feasible for what I've invested into it. Why not believe in yourself? So there was a big step for me. And I think that there's probably a lot of people out there who, you want to be on the safe side. You want to have a good income. You want to be productive. And so this was a big leap for me to say, hey, I'm going to actually do this as a business. So I'm creating my whimsical designs and saying, hey, it would be so valuable as a branding promotional merchandise item to all these new companies that are coming out, and the competition is so fierce, when you start really looking into how many new brands there are. And I said, hey, I'll create a 3D design that incorporates the logo, and then I'll put the holder on top of it, right? That'll be cool. Well, I had to dumb it down, because think about promotional merchandise really is a hat, and then all they do is supply a logo.
Right.
So there's no thinking, there's no meetings, there's no decisions. But if I'm making a custom design out of the base, then you're going to have meetings and decide what you want and go back and forth and change this and change that. So I wanted to analyze what I had learned with other inventions that I've done in my past and say, it's got to be easy to manufacture. It's got to be easy to deliver. Can it be scalable as a business? So you see how, like, when I'm thinking, oh, can I really make a go of this? Can this be a real business? I tried to incorporate what their needs were in the cannabis space to be able to just say, boom, we want 100 of these. We need them in 10 days. And can I deliver that? And I went through this process of finding a factory in China. They were so good. They are so wonderful. And trust me, there are people who are like, oh, you should make this out of hemp.
I'm sure you get a lot of suggestions, just being an entrepreneur like that, especially an inventor. I'm sure that stuff comes a lot.
It does. And like when you decide to have your own business, you wake up in the middle of the night and that's all you're thinking about.
Yep.
When you go to sleep, that's what you're thinking about. You're constantly analyzing every decision you're making, wondering if you're going to get ripped off or if it's going to work or whatever. So I finally made the leap with my puzzle piece shape VapenProp that has a flat space to receive an imprint of a logo. And see, that way then I could just have a standard shape that does as much as I can possibly make one thing do. And all they have to do is supply a logo and I get that imprinted on there. So I got the mold made in China, get a few thousand delivered. And after all my networking, after years and years, and I'm telling you, I carpeted Chicago with prototypes, giving these out to people. And I really think that, on an engagement level with people who actually are consumers, who enjoy the products, they love their VapenProp. And they don't realize until they get it home and start using it how fantastic it is.
Absolutely. It's like a kitchen utility or something that once it's an appliance that once you start, you're like, oh my God, how did I get by before without this thing? And listener, if you want to take a look at these designs that Kirsten's talking about, VapenProp.com, VapenProp.com, and you can see some of these designs. Kirsten, you've got like a few different vape pens and carts alone that are able to fit into these things.
Yeah, that flexibility of the material allows for it to accommodate to a lot. And some people are like, oh, does it hold this? Does it hold that? There are a million different vapes. And a lot of people have nicotine vapes.
Yep.
Those do not have a viscosity problem like cannabis oil does. So it's really nice to have this promotional merchandise item that really accommodates to the audience. You see what I'm saying? The cannabis world is like, oh, this is made just for us. It's not a lanyard.
Right.
Right. Lighters can be used for cigarettes and stuff like that. So I really like that personal touch there. So yeah, I'm patting myself on the back and being like, I'm really working to make sure that this is a viable product, but getting past the gate and having a cannabis company lay money on the line for a new product that nobody really knows anything about is a really, really big thing. So yes, I've had some networking people who I've known for a really long time in the industry who were like, yeah, sure, we'll finally, Kirsten, calm down, we'll finally get these from you. But the real breakthrough was with Curaleaf. And this is just so far, and I have to just admit that as an entrepreneur, I do not think about what I've accomplished in the past. I am hungry like the wolf. I want more, bigger, faster, more scale.
Yeah.
Let's do this thing, right?
It's always about the next thing, not the last thing. Yep.
I'm obsessed. Okay, so I meet this wonderful person, God bless Caleb Kurchinski. He worked for Curaleaf for a while. And he introduced my product to his boss. And then he got laid off. But his boss has stuck with me and ordered 13,000. And I was able to, like, the first one was 8,000, and I put the Curaleaf word mark on it. Beautiful. And then the second one, she's like, hey, we just need something with like a holiday ribbon flourish. So I was able to design their Select brand and add a little holiday ribbon to it. And we just delivered for before Thanksgiving, 5,000 of those to Ohio. So for me, that is proof of concept, if you will. So you think, okay, Kirsten, come on, this is happening. You've got a real business going now. But when you think about the process, a company will go to a promo merch company, or they will be with a marketing agency who makes these decisions, who does a concept for a whole marketing program for the whole quarter. So for me, my little individual, screaming for attention in the corner, it's very hard for those cannabis companies to go, oh, let's slice a little bit out and send it over to Kirsten. So see how I'm still caught between this little space and going full scale.
Yeah.
Right? So in my mind, I really need, and this has been my word, gatekeepers. You know what I'm saying? I need someone who's got the connections, because in my mind, you remember Pet Rock?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
I do.
Or Mood Ring.
Yes.
You know when you see that if something needs marketing, anything can be marketed. So for me, I validated the value of VapenProp and just know that if we put together a clever marketing campaign, this thing can go buck wild. So imagine, if you will, that you go to a cannabis conference, you're walking through all the exhibits, and there's only three exhibits that are offering VapenProp promo merch. They each have their own individual design imprinted on them. And if you take a picture that you collected all three and post it on the internet, then I hit them up and send them another original limited edition.
Oh, okay.
Because they're in the puzzle shape, you get to collect and connect your puzzle pieces. And when you do that, you make an array into which you can store many, many devices.
Oh, that's so cool.
And this little open chamber, when it doesn't have a puzzle tab, this is called the socket. That's the exact size of a 510 cart.
Okay.
So now you can really see that it becomes a very versatile array. Or you can, the single puzzle piece stays attached to your device. You can walk around it, take a hit off of it, and put it down on the side, and it's always upright in the perfect position for peak performance.
Yes, exactly.
The content creates itself.
Totally. And I do love the puzzle piece design that you were just talking about there. And listener, Kirsten kind of just brought two together and was able to click them together. And it's like you could see the way that they fit. So now it's not only are there different individual slots in a singular VapenProp to put different products in, but you can connect it to another VapenProp as like a puzzle piece, and now that array increases so that you can hold other products in there in addition to just carts on their own. And I like that way you just described that, Kirsten, where it kind of encourages people to maybe try and collect all the different ones, the way we used to do with like the McDonald's Monopoly pieces and stuff like that.
Totally get me.
It's a collection to be fun, and you mentioning that you can still use the vape while it's connected into the VapenProp. I think that's huge, because if it's holding it, and you mentioned the material where it's kind of like not so firm where it's a click and then a pull out, but it bends a little bit. So there's some kind of movement there. Once it's got a good hold on your device, I can really see the value in just leaving that on there, but it's light enough where you can just pull on the vape without feeling like it's, disrupted at all. And then you can always just put it down wherever you are, and that VapenProp is going to keep it propped up right.
I love it because, the VapenProp, it looks really simple, but once you start engaging with it, you're like, oh, that's another cool thing I can do with it.
Yeah.
Thank you for your enthusiasm because, some days are rough in entrepreneurship and
totally.
You need a little wind in your wings, right?
I fully get that, Kirsten. I really do, because this podcast, and you talked earlier about the gatekeeping and kind of the issues in dealing with the MSOs and lawyers, and just how cannabis is in such a unique place. And I talk about this all the time on the show. Each state is like its own island. All of us, I think, in the space, we're really looking forward to potential rescheduling, and that just got booted, maybe 3 months, maybe more. We'll see how this goes. So you're always hoping for this win, like just around the corner. The wind is really going to pick up and move us forward, and then you turn the corner and it's just you face plant into a puddle again, and it's like, oh my God, like it just doesn't seem like it nothing works. And I'm coming from legacy media. I've been in radio for over a decade here. I've done TV stuff in the past. Like, I'm somebody that I do news and traffic, and I inform and entertain people. That's what I like to do. And when I was first starting the show, before I did, I pitched it to those legacy companies with which I was already employed. And I was like, hey, listen, people want this information. This is here now. Let's get a partnership with a company who would want to get their brand out there, and let's us create a show that informs consumers as well. And the cannabis companies were super interested. The legacy media companies, those lawyers were the ones who ended up saying no to it. And that's what led me to going out on my own like this and making my own show. And it's been 3 years now. The attitude is there. I've got people listening in 85 countries, but just by themselves. Like, I haven't done any advertising. Podcasting's a strange space. So organically, that many people have been picking up on this. It tells me that people around the world are interested in learning more about cannabis. And you brought up something earlier about the medical. People always saying we need more education, we need more information. And a friend of mine, head of Normal, Paul Armentano, always likes to say that we know all we need to know, which is that longtime users, people who have been at it there's no irreversible side effects. There's nothing that really pulls you down a path of ill health the way that some other substances that we know do, like alcohol, for instance. And yet, there is still very much resistance from the gen pop, the general population who aren't familiar with it themselves, where they do seem to always be looking for more information before maybe they'll make that decision. But you mentioned your niece. You talk about that experience of knowing somebody or even a friend who, once this stuff is getting more normalized in these markets, the states that have legalized, people start utilizing it as an alcohol alternative for a social buzz, or like me when I was younger and I first started, finding out it got me to sleep at night like nothing else did without any kind of ill effects the next day. those things are what move the needle forward when someone's like, oh, this person I trust says that they use it for XYZ, and I know that I could maybe benefit from some of those things, as well as just having these beverages and products like VapenProp that are out there in the wild that people spot at events or at somebody's house. That makes people feel like, oh, this isn't at arm's length anymore. This is not something to be wary of. Maybe those DEA officer, or the DARE officers who came into the public education classrooms, maybe they weren't being entirely truthful about what all this entails and stuff like that.
Oh, prohibition is such a failure. I mean, we could go on and on and on. And I think that as I continue to read new things that come out about cannabis, you almost always see the line, we need more research on this.
Yep.
And I'm like, hey, let's go to the 35,000 studies that are already published on a government-supported website.
Mm-hmm.
And when I wrote my book, I said, Kirsten, people don't have an attention span anymore. They can only absorb about 20 minutes worth of information that can be converted into action.
Right.
And so I'm like, hey, let's make a bouillon cube. Let's really strip it down and say, here's what are the essentials. If I was hiding in my bathroom trying to do one-hitters, and then I come out and I start to be really open and curious about it, okay, we've got a lot of stuff out there now. Like you mentioned, the drinks. And I think that the drinks are about 1% of the overall market, but they take up about 40% of the bandwidth.
Sure.
Because they are approachable.
Exactly. That's what it is.
You've got all the companies competing over the same group of people who are already consumers.
Yeah. And drinking is it's already baked into our society in so many ways. Anybody who's an alcoholic, you go to a social event, if you're trying to abstain from alcohol, the looks you get, the questions that follow up, it really just shows you how critical having a drink in your hand is when you're socializing, and cannabis coming in, providing an alternative to alcohol. I think that also gets to your point as to why it's so talked about and approachable like that.
Absolutely. And we really embraced the mommy's wine culture, which do what you need to do to get through the day. As long as we survive,
yes,
we are champions.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. Wake up the next day. That's the goal.
Yeah, exactly. It just makes you feel bad. It's an emotional dysregulator at minimum. So when we are able to say, hey, you want to hold a can of a beverage in your hand while you're at this social function, take a little bit of the edge off, perfectly fine, feel great in the morning. So yeah, I love having those types of items that break down barriers and make people more comfortable with this. So that's really what we're getting at, where people can be like, yeah, she's not even ashamed of it. She's actually enthusiastic about it.
Yeah.
And it takes a while to get there.
It does.
Like I can even remember walking around, have you heard of Septemberfest in Schaumburg?
Sure.
Not sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to hand out flyers for my very first public presentation at the library, and I was walking up to people and saying, yeah, I'm going to talk about cannabis, and I could just feel those words getting caught in my throat, and trust me, people were weirded out.
Sure.
That's the type of thing, almost like going to the gym or taking up even learning a video game. It's like you have to get past that first level and get over feeling like that. And even just recently, someone was like, yeah, you might not want to bring that up when you first meet these people. And I was very cordial and took that advice. And I'm like, oh, okay. But I'm like, but how am I supposed to cut people out of my life?
Yeah.
Like if they don't like cannabis, I immediately need to.
You're gone. You're out. Right.
That's also saying, don't tell anybody that you work in radio.
Yeah, right.
Why would I not tell people what I do? I'm 10 years past that apprehension. I don't feel that way anymore.
Totally.
It's what I love. I'm super proud of it.
I get that. You've brought up a lot of great points in here, and I think the educational work that you did early on, I know that did help in as not just making connections and networking in the space, which is crucial for anybody who wants to get anything like off the ground, but the educational work that still, we just talked about how like there's plenty of good info out there, but it's reaching people where they are. You talked about the marketing angle of it. One thing that I get into a lot on the show is even the word choice of cannabis versus marijuana. And I've talked with other journalists and PR people, and they're like, you do have to meet people where they are. And so if you're just talking about cannabis all the time, there's a whole bunch of people out there who don't even know what you're talking about. But, so it's kind of tough. It's sort of like I tried not to use the word marijuana, and I still limit it as much as I can, mainly because I feel like, I haven't seen proof that its origins are racist. I feel that they might be, but I haven't seen like documented, written sort of like, oh, here's the line that goes back to it. And so I get that. But racism aside, I think that the negative connotations and all the prohibitionist baggage of last century and the reefer madness stuff, all of that is tied up in the word marijuana. And so at least when you meet that like thing, when you realize that's true, why can't we do a full rebrand and let's talk about the plant in an accurate way that's free of all that baggage?
Oh my God, you just lit me up because marketing is everything. Mm-hmm. My husband worked for Accenture when Tiger Woods was like their face of the company.
Yeah.
And when his wife bashed out that window of his truck,
yeah,
every single reference to him had to be entirely removed from existence.
Wow.
So do you see how branding is absolutely a priority? And that's what made me think, oh, cannabis needs a rebrand. And if you think you're not propagandized, you are.
Yep.
And we are all waking up in a world where we're like, is this where we're really living? Is this the reality? So I am as shocked and amazed as anybody else, but I have been living in the world where people have been getting arrested and put in jail for a plant that doesn't kill people. So when you're living in that upside down and you're actively engaging your legislators to say, hey, come on, use science and epidemiological analysis. Like you said, there's so many people who've been consuming cannabis their whole lives that if there were any significant dangers, epidemiologically, we would know about it. This is how we start research, is by recognizing a pattern,
right,
and then working backward to find the source of how that happens. So we're in such safe territory with this plant. And, people have apprehensions and they cling to what they feel, and then they try to come up with a reason to stick with that. So this is what we're up against. I was reading about Germany. Now we're kind of getting off the topic, but Germany, I'm like, Germany, they love their sciences.
Yeah.
They like to not do things stupidly.
Yeah, and talk about Germany. I've got listeners there, love Germany, recently legalized in parts of that country. Absolutely, bring it on.
And I have been banking on them to really say, oh, hey, we analyzed this. And in the beginning, they were like, oh, yeah, the rules so far say, yeah, you just can't do it in public in front of kids. And I'm like, this is great.
Yeah.
Because they're letting people smoke cigarettes that they know are damaging. You see how,
totally.
I'm like, okay, this is like rational thought. But they've even said that prescriptions for access to medical cannabis has gone up 1,000%. I think because when you go adult use, then the stigma really takes a hit.
Yeah.
And then people are like, oh, hey, let me actually just go legit and get these medical. So I feel like in the United States, the medical programs that broke the barrier for adult use, those are a welcome mat that get people's boots wiped on them.
Yes.
So you can see in the Illinois program that adherence and participation in the program is tanking.
It is, which is unfortunate. I'm a card holder, and I try and encourage people on the show all the time. I'm like, the money saved in the taxes and the time saved when you get to skip to the front of the line has made it worth it 10 times out of 10.
Absolutely. And you have to be within driving distance of one of the 55 original medical cannabis dispensaries, all of which have the ability to serve adult use as well. But in a state of 12.8 million people, being close to a medical dispensary to make it worth it, that's probably why people drop out of the medical program, because they have 3 dispensaries close by them who might offer a discount for a card holders. Like,
For sure.
you might get the card, they might offer you a discount, but the money savings in gas alone, you're like, let me think, I do not want to be registered.
Yeah.
With the government.
Yeah.
Just don't want to give them access to me.
Yeah, there's that too. Those are both great points. And honestly, I'm glad you brought those up, because that convenience factor, it's like anything else in our lives. You know, when people are like, yeah, this gas station down the block is, 20 cents more than the one that's a few miles away. People aren't always going to go to that one, even though there's a money savings. Time is money. And so that convenience, it does absolutely play a role. And I think that medical card registration element and the fact that there are only so many dispensaries that'll abide by those, I do think that you're right about that.
And if you even take into consideration that some people are like, I'm in physical pain. I don't have the means to drive, or if I'm in the car for an hour, it's going to wreck my day. So there are a lot of factors in there, and I'm just glad that we have the adult use access, because it does allow people who have chronic illnesses or any type of situation just to have a lot easier access, where they can be like, hey, I don't know if it's going to work for me. Why register for the program, pay for the card, go through all that rigmarole when I haven't even tried anything out to know if it's going to work for me?
Totally. And, you bringing up the convenience side of it, there was a big story within the last couple of weeks that touches on a few different things. One of them being the aspect of delivery. There are states that allow for cannabis delivery right now. Illinois is not yet one of them. But DoorDash, big delivery company, just came out and said that they are going to offer hemp products delivered where those are available. And in Illinois, Chicago, this area where I'm at, that is a place where that's viable. And I always said that, I saw when I would go out to California and Colorado, there were small businesses, individual operators with billboards saying, hey, I'll deliver your stuff. And I loved that. And I'm like, hey, support a small business. But I knew that it was always going to be Uber Eats and DoorDash that came in to just do this like they deliver everything else. So what I want to ask you is, as somebody who has been an advocate, who has been doing the work that you've been doing for so long, I mean, I think we both know that delivery is a good thing, but I want to get your take on the hemp versus cannabis kind of weird place that we're in right now, because hemp is legalized up to that 0.3% all across the country. Thank you, Farm Bill. Yet the cannabis businesses have to go through all of this government regulation, this red tape that the hemp operators don't have to do. And now people can get hemp products delivered through like a DoorDash. So it feels to me like right now hemp has these huge legs up on cannabis. But what's your take on the whole thing?
Okay, so God, I have an opinion about everything. So we can go at this for a really long time.
For sure.
Right. So at first I thought, oh my God, they are using chemicals to convert the atomic structure of a CBD molecule into THC. And there is no regulatory requirements for them to prove that those molecules are now THC. It could be any array of crazy stuff in there.
Right.
And then people are like, oh yeah, it's D8 for right now, right? Okay, so this gets into chemical technicalities. But they were like, let's turn CBD structure into something that's THC D8. And at first somebody's like, hey, that really gave me a great body buzz. I really enjoyed it. And I'm like, oh, wow. So I guess that's not my thing. I like D9.
Yes.
I like how that affects me.
Same.
But I was still like apprehensive about that, about the, you know how when there's an open door for shenanigans,
absolutely,
people just can't resist.
Absolutely,
right?
Yep.
And from day one, I knew from studying that the plant material without heat, it has no psychoactive nature whatsoever. It's THCA, so its chemical structure is different than the heated that causes the psychoactive effect. So I knew on a technicality, you could sell THCA. I mean, even federally, that's not technically written into the law as illegal. So now when you start to open up all those doors, it's just like, oh God, what is all this? What does this all mean? And I guess in the final analysis, It depends on your ability to withstand risk. Okay, so now when you go to like a Champs trade show, and it's all the nicotine, it's all of the smoke shop stuff.
Yep.
And it does have a little bit of a trashy vibe to it. Are you with me?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So it's not, to me, it's not like that when you go into a dispensary.
Right. No.
It has a whole legitimacy, and you know they're following the rules, and they have 85 live feed cameras to the Illinois State Police that are being watched all the time.
Yep.
And when you get behind the scenes and you see how intense that is. Now, there's somebody who I know who has been helping these state licenses and lotteries, the lawyers that go in with the big 3-ring binders, and then this is how we're going to get you to win this license in this lottery, right?
Yes.
Well, he is positively permanently pissed about hemp. And the thing that I find ironic and hypocritical about it is a law was changed so that he could get a business helping people get these limited licenses. And so now that he has a business, do we just all of a sudden stop legislating?
Right.
So that he gets to keep his business? That's not how this works.
Exactly.
So, we also have to remember that even though hemp-derived cannabis products are, legal under this thing, this change, these chemical structure changes, or even just like, oh, hey, it's actually just THCA. It's just really weed, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of all of that, legacy market rules. So that was a whole new thing. Like, talk about people's ability to withstand risk. That legacy market, it's good.
Yeah.
It's hot. It's fire. They have great products. There's nothing missing from their lineup.
Right.
And sometimes you find the most talented cultivators and the most talented extractors out there in the legacy market because they've got a hopping business, right?
Yeah.
So do you see how, we're mad that there's even legal adult use. Oh, we're mad that there's medical access. We're mad that there's hemp. You have to stop your belly aching. The cat's out of the bag. Weed is available. It's available everywhere. And prohibition does nothing to stop it. It just makes the bad actors be able to get away with bad things. And this is the funny thing, like in cannabis, have you ever grown?
Actually, no. And I want to start, but I haven't yet.
I did it literally out of obligation. And you can understand it's a cult because like once you get into it and you open it up and the lights are shining down and you want to take pictures of it all the time and you touch it and it's sticky.
Yeah.
You have to sniff your fingers every time you.
For sure.
It's fantastic, right? And then you say to yourself, okay, I get it. If you're a legacy cultivator, your buds are your child. You're so proud of them and you're willing to compete with anybody against them. So see how that gives you a level of integrity. And I can bet I can call you out. You probably saw brickweed in your life.
Oh, of course.
The stems and
the seeds. 100%. I'm sure somebody sold me a bag of oregano back in 12th grade or whatever, when I was just getting started, like just after high school. And this is what I tell people all the time about like what the kids today don't understand. They'll complain about prices and all of these hoops to jump through. And I'm like, you can't talk to me because you never waited for an hour on like a dark basketball court in some suburb for a guy you never met to hopefully bring you a bag of something that you didn't know what it was and just hope that was going to work out and be what you wanted when you got home. Like you didn't live that. Yeah, you haven't lived.
Scraped resin out of one of your smoking devices. You couldn't get weed.
Too much. I call that dead resin now because we have the live resin. That's dead resin. And I'm like, if anybody actually, like me, smoked way too much of that back in the day because you just couldn't get the stuff, boy, those are dark times. And it's so much better now.
Oh, so much better. So much better. So do you see how like all of the turmoil over hemp, it's really just this incredible transition. And because we live in the upside down, where none of the legislation makes any sense, they start from a position of complete paranoia, don't factor in any of the positives.
Right.
So getting all up into arms about the hemp transition is just a way to suck some more of our energy. And, even when you get into this advocacy and you're trying to get your legislators to do what's right, They are using you and they are playing you. They are going to wring your ass out until you don't have anything left to give to anybody so that you can't be a trouble to anybody anymore. It is, I know that sounds insidious and critical, but I've been there. It is not democratic.
No, I believe you. I think that's well put. I talk so much on the show about this current rescheduling process, the fact that the DEA is involved in any way, and yet they have never admitted the medical value of the plant, and they're still going off of this old playbook. And I'm like, that alone shows that I'm like, this, the deck is stacked, or the deck is stacked. Like, it's not... This is not an even neutral process and all of that. And obviously, Kirsten, you and I could continue to talk about this, and I really appreciate you taking the time today. Two more things I want to ask you. One, where can people go if they want to get a VapenProp, or how is it best to be involved in what you're doing with that?
You'll be able to go to my website, VapenProp.com, and order one of the whimsical limited edition, because when they run out, I typically just make new designs. And so you immediately have a collectible. And if my vision comes to fruition, when people start to do the collect and connect, and then you can say, oh, I have this fighter jet that they don't even make anymore, or I have circling sharks that they don't make anymore. So I really could see it being an exciting time to sort of even just get online and say, oh, here's the ones I've got. What ones do you have? So VapenProp.com for the 3D printed whimsical designs. And you can even get me at CEO@VapenProp.com, and I will hook you up with promotional merch imprints. And what if you want something specific? Like you're like, oh, well, I don't want a puzzle piece. I want you to make something for me, for my specific brand that only I have. I will do a 3D design for you with no charge for the design process. And then once we have it manufactured in high quantities, that's when you'll get 5,000 of those typically, because that keeps the price down. That puts your price in about $1 each. If you can get a high quantity, you can have something completely custom made in roughly the size of a standard VapenProp. So I'll do custom designs, the whimsical designs on the website, and then the imprints on the VapenProp. And I do just want to mention here really quick before we go is a lot of people smoke joints.
Oh, yeah.
Not everybody is as sophisticated as we are with our vapes.
It's true.
They like to smoke their J's.
I do love pre-rolls, and I do still do joints. I love vapes. I'm huge, but the combustible, it still holds a special place in my heart. And right now, when we're recording this, Kirsten, on the 29th of January, I've got 2 days left of dry January where I abstain from cannabis altogether. So I've got a whole pack. I've got a vape and I've got pre-rolls all ready to go for Saturday. So I'm
going to get so high.
I'm so looking for.
Be very careful.
I will.
Your tolerance is going to be so low.
I will. I'll start that. But please go on.
Okay, so when I'm at all my exhibits, because a couple years ago, man, we were going out to every event, anywhere we could go. We were tearing this place up, right? And a lot of people smoke joints. They're like, oh, I don't vape. I just smoke joints.
Yep.
And then I made this clip that can go onto your hat or the stem of your glasses or on the strap of a bag. And the circle has a convex interior. So like that, a joint locks right down in there. And it prevents people from putting a joint behind their ear. I never knew it was a thing, but once I designed this for people for joints, they were like, oh my God, you need that so bad. I never want to smoke another joint you pulled off from behind your ear.
I love that. I think that is, post-pandemic, I think there's a lot of people out there who are going to appreciate that thoughtfulness, Kirsten, because
and
that
I will
is...
say that if you do get some good weed and you put a joint into this grip and clip, I call it, for your joints, if you put that onto the bill of your hat, you can smell those terps like an air freshener as you're walking around. It's fantastic.
Oh, wow. That sounds awesome. So a couple of good reasons there to get the clip that you can put on, as Kirsten said, to your glasses and below the cap, and just keep the joints. I'm definitely going to grab one of those too, Kirsten. And I want to ask you, you're just unrelated to cannabis, but you mentioned to me in an email that you're not in the States anymore, that you're experimenting with a little, foray into Spain, if you don't mind my saying that. I just wanted to ask you how you're liking it.
Oh my God. I love it so much. And every day that I'm in this beautiful little town of Javia, which if you Go to a map of Spain and take your finger to the most eastern point. It's this charming little town that has this ancient old town and a beautiful bay and a beach, and the people are so nice. And no, I'm going to hold on to this place with white knuckles, but the visa process a little dicey. So we have a 6-month rental here. We always did plan on going back and selling our house, liquidating, and then becoming permanent here. We'll see how that goes. But there are so many reasons. I'm almost 60. And as we were raising our kids, we thought, by the time our kids go to college, they'll have made it public, where you don't have to go $250,000 in debt to put your kids through college. That didn't happen.
Oh, God.
We thought, they'll have some type of social health care option. You know how like veterans have their Veterans Administration, and then you have your Medicare, and those are types of social medicine.
Yep.
And I thought this will be a natural thing to do because it saves so much money, but we just didn't get there in time.
Still waiting for that.
And then you start to think, especially with what we've seen in medical cannabis, it is scary to get sick.
Oh, yeah.
It makes you so vulnerable. And so because I have seen those things up front, close and personal, I thought to myself, where in the world could we possibly go? The temperature here is mild. They have social medicine. It's beautiful here. And this is so crazy. Like, I had a rental car, it had a little bit of a problem. My husband's like, we're hooking you up. Don't worry, we'll get you another car. And I go, well, you don't need to worry about what side of the car the gas cap is on because I'm not in danger here. So you have a wife, right?
Yes, I do.
So I want my gas cap on the driver's side. So if I see some lunatic,
yes,
I can jump inside the car door and speed away, lock up and speed away, right? So this time when he was looking for a rental and seeing what choices we had, I'm like, you can put the gas cap on any side of the car. I'm not afraid here. If somebody walks up to me in Spain, they're going to help me put gas in my car.
Right. That's amazing. And I got to say, as a guy, I just never thought of that, Kirsten. And my, that's one of those things that maybe guys don't think about in terms of the fear of just existing in the world that way. But you bring up a valid point, and I know that there are a lot of women that feel like that. And so you're just kind of saying that overall it's a small example of the safety you feel in the town of Spain that you're living in now versus living in the States in whatever town you were in here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So do you see how, like, once you make the choice and you start to do the pros and cons, like when you come to Spain, you want to stay in Spain.
Right on. Well, listen, you've definitely put it on my map. I'm going to go out there and make a dot on the atlas just to and try and put it on our calendar because you've made it sound wonderful, and I would absolutely love to come and visit and just kind of see how that whole thing is. But in the meantime, listener, if you want to get a little bit of what Kirsten Velasco has contributed to the world in the cannabis space, you can head to VapenProp.com and check out some of those designs she was talking about. Go to that email address she mentioned earlier, and you can get a custom design too. But I think you'll find, like many of us who have tried these things, once you try it, you'll realize, how did I ever get by before without this thing? Because it fills a need that as more people are vaping, it's just a really, really important thing to have. Kirsten Velasco, CEO and inventor of VapenProp, along with cannabis advocate and author and great public speaker. Thank you for stopping by today and just sharing your perspective and just talking a little bit about the crazy space that is cannabis.
Thank you so much. Could talk about it all day. Let's do it again sometime.
And there you have it. I want to thank one more time my guest, Kirsten Velasco, inventor of VapenProp, as well as advocate for medical cannabis, author, and public speaker. Someone who has done a lot to move the conversation around cannabis, and specifically medical cannabis, forward. And I think that alone was some great work that she did. But along with that, to become an inventor and invent this VapenProp, which, as I discussed, I feel like really fulfills a critical need here in the space. And now that I've tried the product, let me tell you my feelings on this thing. The idea always spoke to me. I totally got what she was talking about the whole time in terms of the need of it. If you have used a vape of any kind, most kinds I should say, but if you have used a vape cart with any kind of oil or concentrate, not the dry herb vaporizers here, not Dynavaps and the others of the like. We're talking about cannabis, live resin, oil, the concentrates that are in these carts that you buy either separately or the disposable versions, and then you screw them into a pen or some kind of vaporizer, and then you toast it, you turn it on, you charge the vape, and then you press the button and you can inhale your cannabis that way. Well, one of the tricky issues that has come up is that if you've got that vape in your pocket or you've got it on some kind of surface but it falls onto its side, you can crack the container that the vape is in, and now when you're pulling on it, you're getting airflow through that crack and just messing with your whole experience that way. Anybody who's gotten bubbles in their cart knows what that's like. Not fun. Not to mention the waste of money that Kirsten alluded to in our conversation. You spend $50, $80, $100 on these carts, and then it falls off your desk because it rolled. Not great. Also not great, even if it doesn't break, if you keep it in your pocket or it's lying on its side or whatever, and then you're just like, oh, you know what, I feel like taking a hit, and you screw it into your vape pen or whatever you're using, but the concentrate, the oil is all gathered on the side away from the heating source. Now it's not heated properly. You're not getting the type of hit that you're looking for or that you're expecting, and that's at best. At worst case scenario, the oil is actively blocking the inhalation port. So now it's like you're trying to suck peanut butter through a straw, which I've never done, but the illustration is meant to convey that it's not easy to do and maybe downright impossible. If you've ever seen people just red-faced and with all the veins popping out of their neck trying to pull through a vape pen, that's what's happening there. The hole is blocked. And so, point is, there's a lot of problems that can pop up when you're using the vape. They're convenient and they're discreet, but the issue of storing them, and even if it's in your pocket, kind of its orientation, keeping the thing vertical, the cart itself, so that the oil gathers where it's meant to. And when it's time to inhale it and heat it up, it's near the heat source the way it's supposed to be. So for peak functionality, you have to keep it oriented in a certain way, which is straight up and down, vertical. The VapenProp allows for that beautifully. Kirsten talked about the material of it. It is not rigid like steel or wood or some other material that you would pop it into the slot and then it's like, okay, it either fits or it doesn't. Kirsten's design of this VapenProp means that it has some give to it. And it already fits a couple of different, sizes in there. But because you can manipulate it, because you can kind of move it around a little, you can make it grip some products that you might not expect to fit in there. I have been using this with a pen, and sometimes I'll throw carts in there that I have laying around because there are multiple holding ports. So I've got my pen in there, which has a cart on top of it already. And then I've got 2 carts that are just separate, waiting to be consumed, stored in the VapenProp as well, in other holes because it keeps them vertical and just ready for me to swap in whenever I feel like. And as Kirsten alluded to, the VapenProp is really light, 3D printed. And so whenever I want to hit the pen that is embedded in the VapenProp that is, sitting there in its holster, I am not in any way prohibited from doing that. I leave the pen in the VapenProp when I pick it up and I hit it. And then I put it right back down on the desk and it stands vertically waiting for me to grab it again. This is wonderful. It is subtle. It is fun. It is well designed, and like I said, it solves a problem that anybody who has familiarity with these vape carts understands. And on top of the VapenProp itself, she alluded to that joint clip that she invented as well, that she added because she understands some people don't vape. Some people prefer their pre-rolls. I love a good pre-roll. I love, a joint that my friend rolls too. It doesn't have to be pre-rolled by a company. Somebody else can make an artisan joint or a blunt or whatever. And this concave clip that she has created, you can clip it to the bill of your baseball cap or whatever hat you're wearing. If it's got some kind of rim, you can clip it to that. You can clip it to the frames of your glasses. I've done it to my glasses, my actual vision glasses. and sunglasses as well. This thing will grip this clip will put on whatever it is that you are trying to grip it to, because just like the VapenProp, it is a little flexible. So it maintains a grip, but you can kind of manipulate it so that it'll grip a different surface depending on where you want to stick it. And walking around with a joint in that thing, she talked about not putting them behind the ears anymore. I'll never do that again because I don't need to now. You've got this clip, you stick it on the bill of your cap or your glasses or whatever, and the joint is just right there. And as she talked about the terpenes, you can smell it. When you're walking around and you've got that thing clipped, it's like you've got a car air freshener just chipped to your shoulder. You're walking around and you are smelling that thing all the time. It's fantastic. So if either of these sound appealing to you, head to VapenProp.com, check out the designs, and get some for yourself, because you only need one of these things. You can get multiples of the VapenProps, like Kirsten said. You can plug the puzzles together. But even if you're only going to get one of each, they are worth it. Because I'm telling you, once you've tried it, it's like a lot of good products. Once you try it, you really can't go back, because you're like, hey, this solved a problem that I didn't really realize was a problem. And now that I have the solution, why would I go back? One more product that I want to tell you about before I get into some news and events here. There are some other gummies that were on the 420 gift guide from Grasslands. Hometown Hero. That is the maker of some delicious double-take gummies. They list them as fast-acting, long-lasting, and they got a couple of different flavors. The one I've got here in front of me of their live rosin gummies is pomegranate raspberry. Great combination. I typically like that. 20 milligrams per gummy of Delta-9 THC. Dual action blend, indica dominant, 21 and over. 10 vegan gummies, they're listed as. I've not opened these yet. 30 calories per gummy. And again, 10 milligrams of the Delta-9 THC distillate. And they also say nano-emulsified water-soluble hemp-derived Delta-9 THC. Might be the same 10 milligrams either way, but I figured I would also try this with you here. I already cracked into my Fable, Into the Woods, got that going. And let me pop one of these Hometown Hero Double Take Pomegranate Raspberry Gummies. Oh, they're all individually wrapped. This is great. And these are large. Cheers. Oh my gosh. Oh wow. That is indulgent. That is a good gummy. Large. And, I'm recording this at 9 o'clock at night. Maybe that 20 burger might probably going to have some interesting dreams this evening. But either way, that was delicious. And I will report to you on its effects next week if I make it. But cheers. I'm going to chase it with this Fable here. And so now, before it really knocks me off my pedestal here, I want to tell you about a new online patient registration portal for Illinois medical cannabis patients. I got an email as a card holder, which I cannot recommend highly enough. For the state of Illinois, so worth it to get your med card. But as a card holder, I was informed via email that they have a new patient portal, which is going live next Tuesday, April 29th. And this message that they sent today was to inform that the system is going to be down until that time now. It went down earlier today on the 22nd at 5 p.m. and will resume access at 9 a.m. on the 29th of April. So any registrations for card holders, any corrections, there is an extension. If you have anything you were supposed to do between April 15th and May 29th, there's an extension until May 30th. As soon as it's open again next Tuesday on the 29th, you can log in, you can print your card, you can create the new login and password, caregivers can log in and get their necessary information. You can get all the info. There are videos that are helpful to set up your account, all that stuff. So if you are or are looking to become a medical cannabis patient in Illinois, this new portal is the one to go to. I have shared a link to the portal in the description notes below this episode. So you click the link, it'll take you right there. Now moving to a neighboring state of Illinois, Missouri, over to the west. That state's cannabis industry is booming, despite recalls and revoked licenses. This is an article from NPR out of St. Louis, published by Danny Wysentowski. Apologies. I won't read the whole thing. I typically like to encourage you to read these yourselves, and I've linked this article below as well, but I'll give you the gist of it here. There are two sides to Missouri's cannabis industry. Since voters legalized the sale of recreational cannabis to adults in 2023, the industry has generated nearly $1.5 billion in sales and $250 million in sales tax, a windfall that's earmarked to fund programs for veterans, substance abuse treatment, and the state's chronically underpaid public defenders. But the industry's rapid expansion has come with complications. This includes a pattern of revocations in the state's cannabis microbusiness program. Of the 96 licenses issued by the state since 23, 34 have been revoked by regulators, including 25 revocations issued last week. The industry's growth is also bringing customers to cannabis chefs like Dragon Biscuits' Mike Zumwalt. Zumwalt was one of a dozen chefs to compete in STL's Pot Chef competition. What is that about? That sounds amazing. That's all I'm going to read of this article. It links to, it looks like a piece that ran on the NPR station for St. Louis. It's about a half an hour audio file, which is at the bottom of this article. Something to listen to, but I am going to try and get one of these chefs on the show because that competition sounds fabulous. So I've linked the article below as well. Moving to the Northeast in New York, the Post wrote an article this week, Meet NYC's weed-loving over 60s as seniors are using marijuana more than ever. And I'm filing this under no duh. Welcome to, April of 2025. This is something that might not be news to anybody who's listened to this podcast or anyone who's been paying attention. As I spoke with my guest last week, Kim Burns of Tribe Tokes, we talked about how seniors and women are two of the leading demographics who are consuming cannabis, embracing it at the fastest rates. But anyway, this Post article was written by Tracy Schwartz, published April 19th, so Saturday before the 20th. And you can get an idea of the quality of this writing by the lead here. Not to be blunt, but Gail Zanchelli hated marijuana as a teen growing up on Long Island. Tried it, never liked it, said Zanchelli, 64. Now, it's part of her nightly routine. The Deer Park resident takes 60 milligrams of gummies infused with THC, the main active ingredient in marijuana, before bed to relieve chronic throbbing in her tailbone. She's part of a budding group of seniors who use cannabis to relax, ease pain, sleep better, or manage their mental health. The growing interest in weed products follows the widespread decriminalization of marijuana, which has helped to elevate public opinion of the herb. That's all I'm going to read because it's about all I can take. I've linked this below. Rather than read the Post, I suggest if you're interested in information like this, just keep listening to the Cannabis Man podcast. And one final article I want to read for you here, or at least share with you. This is from The Guardian, and it is having to do with a study that found medical cannabis shows potential to fight cancer. Now, this is something that's been rumored in years past, but this is the largest ever study of its kind, and it found the same thing. The subheader is the analysis aims to solidify agreement on cannabis's potential as a cancer treatment, according to the lead author of the research. This article is published by Hannah Harris Green, Friday, April 18th at theguardian.com. I've linked this below too. I'll read the gist though. The largest ever study investigating medical cannabis as a treatment for cancer, published this week in Frontiers in Oncology, found overwhelming scientific support for cannabis's potential to treat cancer symptoms and potentially fight the course of the disease itself. The intention of the analysis was to solidify agreement on cannabis's potential as a cancer treatment, says Ryan Castle, research director at the Whole Health Oncology Institute and lead author of the study. Castle noted that it's been historically difficult to do so because marijuana is still federally considered an illegal Schedule I narcotic. Study was funded by Cancer Playbook, which works with the Whole House Oncology Technology Institute to collect, analyze, and share data on patient-reported outcomes. While research restrictions on Schedule I substances severely hamper clinical research on cannabis in humans, there is a large body of observational studies on medical cannabis and cancer, as well as lab research that looks at cannabis's effects on tumors, in test tubes, and in animals. The analysis included as many of those studies as possible. That gets at something I was talking about with Kirsten, which is the fact that the scheduling really does inhibit some of this research that's been done. But as I mentioned, and as I've talked about with Paul Armentano of Normal, as he likes to say, we have all the information that we need in terms of cannabis's harm potential with long-term use, which is to say that observational studies and the anecdotal data that many of us who have used cannabis or known people who have used it throughout their lives are aware of, is that cannabis does have positive medical effects. And Castle's study looked at more than 10,000 studies on cannabis and cancer, which he said is 10 times the sample size of the next largest study, which we believe helps make it a more conclusive review of the scientific consensus. Castle says his team hoped to find a moderate consensus about cannabis's potential as a cancer treatment and expected the best case scenario, that's a quote, to be something like 55% of studies showing that medical cannabis improved cancer outcomes. That was what Castle said his team hoped to find optimistically. He is quoted here as saying it wasn't 55-45. It was 75-25. That is a huge margin scientifically. The study overwhelmingly supported cannabis as a treatment for cancer-related inflammation, appetite loss, and nausea. Perhaps more surprisingly, it also showed that cannabis has the potential to fight cancer cells themselves by killing them and stopping their spread. As I was just alluding to, quote from Castle here, that's a shocking degree of consensus in public health research, and certainly more than we were anticipating for a topic as controversial as medical cannabis. That's all I'm going to read. I've linked this article below as well as those others. And for those of you who have stuck around from the beginning and wondered which is the best state for cannabis growth in America, this study looked at the most favorable states for growing cannabis. And the states that they found, I will tell you the top 3. And I guarantee you, none of these top 3 are what you were thinking. Number 3, West Virginia. Number 2, Connecticut. And number 1, the best state to grow cannabis in the U.S., Louisiana. Louisiana. That boot down at the south end of the country along the Gulf, that, they say, is the best spot in the United States to grow cannabis. What's the worst state this study also looked at? Nevada. This study was conducted by low-THC flower specialists Green Unicorn Farms, and they analyzed 9 key factors, including climate conditions like temperature, humidity, sunlight, land costs, air quality, and CO2 levels. Each state was assigned a score out of 100 based on which states provided the optimal environment for growing cannabis. Louisiana tops the ranking with a score of 64.81 out of 100. There's more details here in terms of those categories and how Connecticut and West Virginia took their spots as well. I have linked this study below for your perusal too. I hope you enjoyed all of that. I hope you found it informative and entertaining. And if you didn't, hopefully this High Haiku will help with the entertainment bit. Let me wet my whistle with this Fable drink one more time. And I'll turn it over to my buddy Reg Kiefer to read for you this week's High Haiku. Take it away, Reg.
In the garden's hush, towers loom behind the bloom. time forgets to move. Whoa. That was this week's High Haiku?
Yes, it was. Thank you, Reg. And it was themed after my visit to the Osaka Garden and those cherry blossoms I told you about at the beginning of the episode. Really, really wonderful moment there. I just tried to ground in it, and I found it to be peaceful and very thematic, and I thought a perfect inspiration for a High Haiku. I hope you agreed, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. I want to thank my guest, Kirsten Velasco, inventor of VapenProp, as well as an advocate for medical cannabis and author and public speaker. Want to thank my friends at Grasslands PR agency that's always mindful of the cannabis space and the expanding green frontier, helping people brand better. Check out their 420 gift guide for some of these great products like Fable and the Hometown Hero gummies. Be sure to leave a rating and or review on whichever platform you are checking this show out. And as always, you can reach me by texting into the show. There's a line right at the top of the description notes that says text Cannabis Man. Click it and you can send a message that'll get to me. Follow the show on social media at C-Man Podcast on X, Blue Sky, Instagram. You can check me out, Don Kleppin, Kleppin, on LinkedIn or at my website, donkleppin.com. Here's some of the voiceover work that I have done and some written works as well, working on all kinds of stuff all the time, and I really appreciate you checking it out and listening to the Cannabis Man Podcast. Have a great week, and we'll talk next time. Bye-bye. Cannabis Man is 100% originally crafted by myself, Don Kleppin. Original theme music written and composed by Yusu Kim, aka Good Son.